Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Gordon. We are back with another video. Today, I'm going to be showing you how you can be generating 15 to 25% using stablecoin interest rate arbitrage strategies. As always, if you enjoy the content, please make sure to smash that thumbs up button below, hit subscribe, hit that bell notification icon. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers. Make sure to subscribe, guys. Grab your free copy of The Rise of Bitcoin in the description, and let's show you how to make money on the stablecoins. Okay, so before we jump into showing you actually how to execute this strategy on a particular protocol like Jupiter Lend Multiply, I want to break down the strategy and the core components of how it actually works, because there's so many opportunities in DeFi right now to be generating consistent yield on stablecoins. And yes, it's very possible to be getting 15 to 25% on your stablecoins by taking intelligent leverage and not using too much risk. So how this works is, on one side, i.e. the collateral side, you are supplying a collateral asset which you can actually use to generate yield. In today's example, I'm going to be showing you Syrup USDC, which is able to generate a little bit over 6% yield, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, so you're getting interest, or you're earning interest from supplying a stable coin or a yield bearing stable coin that actually accrues value to the token price. That is what's happening with Syrup USDC. Okay. Then on the borrow side, or the debt asset, you're borrowing another stable coin that is ultimately cheaper to borrow compared to the interest you're earning on the supplied collateral asset. So again, if we're able to supply Syrup USDC and earn 6%, and then we're able to borrow USDC against it, and we're only paying 4% to borrow the USDC, there is a 2% spread. We're benefiting from the arbitrage between the interest rate we're paying to borrow USDC and the interest rate we're actually earning from supplying Syrup USDC. Okay. The final step in the equation, once you understand there's an arbitrage that you're benefiting from here, is to multiply or loop up your exposure. What do I mean by that? Well, it means we can keep borrowing more USDC against our Syrup USDC collateral and use the borrowed USDC to go ahead and purchase even more exposure to Syrup USDC, which increases the amount of yield we're generating on a percentage basis because we're multiplying that arbitrage opportunity. So instead of just getting the 2% spread, if we can multiply that 6 or 8 times, we're able to get something closer to 15 to 20% APY from this particular strategy. Okay, there's tons of these types of opportunities in DeFi right now. And I know when markets are moving sideways and pulling back, it can be difficult to stomach some of that volatility, but there are still ways you can be generating consistent yield on stable coins and getting phenomenal returns. Okay, so let's look at one of these particular examples. I'm going to jump over to Jupiter here. If you're not familiar, Jupiter is the largest protocol on the Solana network by total value locked. They launched Jupiter Lend as the biggest and latest arm of the protocol back in August of 2025. And in the multiply area, you can benefit from executing strategies just like the one I mentioned. And I'm actually running a test here at this moment in time. And what you can see is I'm supplying Syrup USDC as collateral. This is my collateral side asset. Remember from our example, we're always going to have a collateral supply side asset, and we're always going to have a debt or borrow side asset. So on the supply side, I'm supplying Syrup USDC. We can see that here, $628 of supplied Syrup USDC. And you can see I'm earning 5.9% from supplying that Syrup USDC. Okay. The borrow side, or the debt asset in this scenario, again, is USDC. I'm borrowing USDC in order to lever up my exposure to Syrup USDC. And again, you can see the borrow APY is currently sitting at 4.2%. So the spread in this particular example is 1.7% at this moment in time. I'm stressing this moment in time because the supply and borrow APYs here are variable rates, they do change over time. There is periods when the spread is greater than 1.7%. Sometimes the spread is actually up to 2.5 or 2.8%. And then there is times when the spread is lower than 1.7%. Sometimes it squeezes closer to 1%, and the yield or the spread is more narrow, meaning the net APY is ultimately a little bit less. But as you can see, with this particular strategy, what I've done is I've used a 6.2x multiplier, meaning I supplied my own collateral in the form of Syrup USDC. I looped it or levered it up with a 6.2x multiplier, which is ultimately what is increasing my exposure to the spread and getting me that 15.3% APY on stablecoins. Again, I'm stressing this is on stablecoins because give me any bank that's giving you 15% on your cash or even 5% on your cash. That is a stretch for a very lucrative high yield savings account. You're looking at being able to get 15% net APY on this particular strategy. And this multiplier is not the max multiplier. I'm using strategic intelligent leverage here because there is still some potential risks involved. Yes, stable coins are stable, and yes, they are very low risk when it compared to everything else in the crypto space. But I prefer to leave a little bit of a buffer here because, as you can see, as you begin to change the multiplier here on this example, it gives you the status and the max LTV. And so what this is telling me here is with the leverage I'm using, I'm getting 15.77%. But if I used the maximum amount of leverage, you can see that I would be getting closer to 19%. Again, that is with the current spread, and that will change over time. In fact, my yield changes over time with the 6.24x multiplier. It typically fluctuates between 15 and 18%. Okay, so it will change over time, and it's your job as the liquidity provider to monitor both the supply APY and the borrow APY. But I prefer not to use the max amount of leverage because, in the unlikely event that there is a depeg scenario with one of these assets, you will potentially have that risk of liquidation. And so leaving a buffer of at least 5% is what I personally prefer to do. Again, if we jump back to one of these other examples here, you can see that you have the capacity to be doing the same or a similar strategy with Syrup USDC and USDG. And if you begin to put in an example amount of capital here and increase up that leverage, it's giving you information about the actual percentage drop that you can experience. As you can see here, it says if Syrup USDC reaches 1.038 USDG, i.e., it drops by 7.16%, your position may be partially liquidated. So I like to keep this percentage buffer at above 5% always to make sure that I have a little bit of room for wiggle. If you do have a slight or very small depeg event, you can still stomach up to a 5% swing. And so if we go back to my particular position here and look at the numbers, you can see that I have that above 5%. It's closer to 5.5% at this moment in time. And so I always prefer to have that buffer at 5% plus. Okay. What you're looking at here is execution of this strategy that's been running for a couple of months, generating consistently around that 15% APY on stablecoins. And you can go ahead and do this as well. This is just one example in a myriad of different opportunities here in the DeFi space at the moment. Of course, there's other protocols on Solana like Camino Finance, where you can execute similar multiply and looping strategies. If I come over here, again, you've got the ability to be doing something similar with Syrup USDC and PYUSD, i.e. you're supplying Syrup as the supply side collateral asset, borrowing PYUSD to lever up or increase your exposure to Syrup USDC as a yield-bearing stablecoin, and you're able to generate what they're saying here is 14.66%. You have the opportunity to do it with Syrup USDC, USDG here to be getting 26%. So there's no shortage of these opportunities in DeFi right now for very lucrative stablecoin yields. It's up to you to learn this skill and take advantage of that, because even in downturns in the market, you have that ability to generate phenomenal yield on your stablecoins in a safe manner and build your financial future. That is it for today's video, guys. If you got any value out of this stablecoin interest rate arbitrage breakdown, please make sure to smash that thumbs up button right under my finger. Take 3 seconds. Please give it a thumbs up. We're on the road to our first 100,000 subscribers, so make sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification icon as well. Grab your free copy of The Rise of Bitcoin in the description, and we'll catch you in the next one.